All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hostaway's monthly webinar series. We're still waiting for everyone to join. It's going to take up to a minute because Zoom is slow. First, some ground rules. We have a chat open. You can put comments there if you want to talk to other participants. We also have a Q&A section that you should be using for any questions so that we can go through them at the end of the call. And with us here today, we have our VP of Engineering, Adam, and we have our Chief Customer Officer, Josh, and me. I'm the CEO of Hostaway. My name is Marcus. We're going to be talking about an incredibly important topic today, safeguarding your vacation rental property management company. Specifically, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, because no matter how much your job involves very physical things like helping out guests, things like maintaining properties, cleaning. The fact is that you're running an online business, and being a property manager is a very tough job in that you have to be an expert at pretty much everything. You have to understand accounting. You have to understand housekeeping. You have to understand interior design, real estate investing. You have to be an expert in everything. And we've noticed that a lot of property managers simply don't happen to be experts in cybersecurity, which is perfectly okay. But that's why we thought we'd put together this webinar, because we've seen quite a few situations where property managers get in trouble because they think they're running an offline business, but actually most of the things that happen in a property management business happen online. And right now, there is, well, not right now, for the last 10 years, there has been a lot of fraud attempts towards this industry. And before we get into that and why that is, I just wanted to present who's Hostaway. We're leading all-in-one short-term rental software for property managers worldwide. Our software, if you're not a customer yet, whether you have 2 properties or 2,000, we're probably the best solution for you, at least according to our partners here on the screen. Airbnb considers us the top tier. Verbo considers us the top tier. Booking.com as well. So if you don't trust me, trust them. Now, we did recently raise the largest amount of funding that any vacation rental software company has done in the industry. In May, 4 months ago, we announced 175 million. And that money is going to be used to bring better value and better support for all our customers. Now, why are vacation rentals being targeted? I'll explain a bit why. And for those of you who ever have dealt with credit cards, this applies to you as well. First of all, for criminals online, they are constantly trying to find out ways where there are places where there's vulnerabilities, but at the same time, where they can make a lot of money. So your grandma's Gmail account, yes, it's very easy to get access to it. But to be honest, you're not going to make $1 million on your grandma's Gmail account. It will, in fact, be very, very hard, because the worst thing you could do is unsubscribe to her newsletters. But a business like a vacation rental has a couple of things that are very different from other businesses. Let's say if you wanted to intercept the payment traffic with a gas station, that would be quite hard, because a gas station has thousands of transactions a day. They're typically small, and each transaction is about the same size. I mean, if people fill up their cars with gas, they're not going to spend $1. They're also not going to spend $1,000. They're going to spend approximately the same amount. So it's very easy to detect any suspicious patterns when it comes to a gas station. However, when it comes to vacation rentals, especially payments, the amount of transactions, first of all, they're not regular. You might have a day when you have 0 bookings. You might have a day when you have 10 bookings. And the amount of those bookings can vary a lot. You might have a booking for 500. You might have a booking for 10,000. This makes it incredibly hard, just from the monetary perspective, to detect suspicious activity, because any algorithm that a bank's run is going to immediately flag these transactions as suspicious. If you go 1 week without transactions and then you get $10,000 booking, yeah, that's going to look suspicious in any system compared to any other business. But I'll hand over to Adam here and explain a bit why you should focus on cybersecurity when you're running a vacation rental property management business. Adam, or did you want me to take this slide?
I can take this one, Marcus, thanks.
All right.
Can I have the next slide, please?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Let's go back one slide. I'll take this slide. So I wanted to mention a couple of examples that we've seen over the years. I'd say one of the most extreme examples is when you have a company where there are two co-founders who start arguing with each other. One decides to leave and burn everything on the way out. Typically, two co-founders in a company would have access to all the systems. Now, some examples of what someone might do is switch the payment on Airbnb. You know, you get payments from Airbnb, they go to a bank account, but anyone who has access to that account could change that. And that wouldn't be so great because suddenly there's a bunch of money that's supposed to come in and it's not coming in. What we've also seen is that people might be trying to get access to your employees or your own access to systems like Airbnb or Hostaway and impersonate staff there. And a good example of that is actually related to security deposits. Many of you are already sending additional contracts or maybe payment instructions for security deposits to your guests. Now, I'm sure that money goes to you and I'm sure that it's returned in a good manner, but just imagine if someone got access, someone with ill intentions got access to your system and was able to send another message to your guest that says a security deposit of $500 is required. The guest might pay that and you would never know unless you saw the message yourself. These are things that could happen. Another thing is your competitor or basically any enemies you have. Maybe you went to a restaurant and you upset the owner and they decide to take out the vendetta on you. People could get access to your account and just go and delete stuff or change things. Suddenly you get bookings for $1 a night. That's really not good. Now, one reason why this is not good to take place here, it's worth mentioning that you should be protected. You have an insurance, and if you're using a credit card, a bank, they have protections against these things. But one thing that you're not protected from is if someone else gains access to your vacation rentals on, let's say, Airbnb or Hostaway, Vrbo, Booking.com, and their systems detect suspicious activity, they will shut down the listing. And the impact that has on you, in the worst case, all your existing reservations will be canceled because they don't want to take the reputational damage that would happen in case their guests receive messages. And this would cause a very real loss of money that is not covered by insurance. And of course, there's a lot of reputation involved as well. If just imagine the reviews that you would get from guests who got scammed on a security deposit. And this is why you should take this seriously. It's the fact that the OTAs means the online travel agencies, so Airbnb, Booking.com, and Vrbo, and these channels, they take this very seriously. Actually, all e-commerce businesses take it seriously, but you should be taking it seriously too. All right, Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Marcus. I wanted to talk a bit the top 10 mistakes property managers make with security. So keeping passwords in a spreadsheet can be a major security risk. Spreadsheets are simply not secure. And even when they are password protected, if the file falls into the wrong hands, all your passwords could be compromised. It is much safer to use a dedicated password manager to store and manage passwords across the team. Insecure passwords and weak passwords. A weak password is a password that is easy to guess or crack, such as the word password itself or 123456. And the simplest way of cracking this kind of passwords is using brute force dictionary attack method, where an automated script tries all the words on its lists. An insecure password, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily have to be weak. It can be also the case of the same password shared across multiple services. So if one of the services gets hacked, the attacker will always add it to the dictionary. It is a common practice among hackers to use the data from breached services. in this sort of attacks. So it is very important to strong unique passwords that include combination of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters to protect your account from unauthorized access. Filtering emails from all notifications. So managing the overwhelming number of emails we receive can be a challenge, but ignoring them is not a good solution. So simply by applying the rules on our inbox, we can easily filter out unwanted messages and prioritize important ones. Additionally, some services offer email notifications in case of suspicious login attempts, enabling us to react quickly and prevent unauthorized access to our data. So we shouldn't underestimate the value of the timely response. It can make all the difference in keeping the account safe and secure. Using unscreened virtual assistants. It is generally not recommended to use virtual assistants who have not been properly vetted and trained, as they may pose a security risk. To ensure the security of your virtual assistant, be sure to only use the reputable services and research their security measures. Additionally, consider limiting the amount of sensitive information you share with your virtual assistant and regularly review the data they have access to. Not securing your workstation with antivirus software and firewall, which can leave your computer vulnerable to malware and cyber attacks. Antivirus software and firewalls work together to protect your computer from viruses, spyware, and other malicious software. Without these protections, your computer is more likely to become infected with malware, and your sensitive data can be compromised. Connecting to public Wi-Fi without using a VPN, a virtual private network, can be very dangerous because it leaves your internet traffic vulnerable to interception by attackers. Public Wi-Fi networks are often unencrypted or poorly secured, which makes it easy for attackers to steal your sensitive information, such as login credentials or even financial data. By using VPN, your internet traffic is encrypted, and your online activities are more secure from prying eyes. And very important point here, no security checklist for onboarding and offboarding staff. Not having a security checklist for onboarding and offboarding staff can be a major security risk. Without a proper checklist, you can miss out on important security steps, such as revoking access to the company systems on offboarding. And this can result in unauthorized access to sensitive information, data breaches, and other security incidents. And this happened in the past to many companies, even the big ones. Unrestricted access to the API or any integrations. So the API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is a set of protocols and tools for building software applications. APIs allow different software applications to communicate with each other, making it easier to share data and functionality between them. It usually allows to access all the data without using the application itself. In the context of security, it is important to implement proper access control and monitoring for APIs and integrations to ensure that only authorized users can access sensitive information. And unrestricted admin access on all user accounts, it's something that is unfortunately a common practice. And it's a very bad practice because it allows anyone with that level of access to make changes to any user's account and access sensitive information. This can lead to, again, to data breaches, unauthorized access, and security incidents. Additionally, having unrestricted admin access can also lead to accidental or intentional changes to the system that can cause downtime or other issues. And finally, not using 2FA, two-factor authentication where possible, can be also a major security risk. So 2FA adds an additional layer of security to your accounts by requiring a second form of authentication, such as a text message, fingerprint scan, or email verification code, in addition to the password. So without 2FA, your account is simply more vulnerable to unauthorized access if your password is compromised.
All right, thank you, Adam, and thanks, Marcus. So Marcus put in the chat, but if you guys have any questions about security and securing your account or just in general, put it in the Q&A so we can get to that. So let's talk about why this is relevant, specifically in the vacation rental industry, right? So there's things like you want to make sure that your account, you're safeguarding financial data and your reputation. So account compromises could expose sensitive financial information. These could lead to things like fraudulent transactions, unauthorized access to financial reporting. They could tarnish your reputation, as Marcus talked about earlier. Think about, messages, canceled bookings, et cetera, right? That could potentially happen if your account's compromised. So I'm trying to paint the picture here of an industry specific reason why you should be as concerned and as vigilant on security as Hostaway is. It affects guest trust and overall credibility. So we'll get into why this matters as a brand, as your brand, a little bit later on. But this is you could start affecting guests and your company reputation with OTAs, and then when you start building brand later on, your company in general, it's enough to be have a bad reputation on the OTAs. If you're building your business and your brand, it's even a bigger issue. So also mitigating competitive risk. So just imagine a scenario where a competitor gains access to all of your company information. This breach could lead to a severe competitive disadvantage, such things as like sensitive pricing strategies and business plans. They just become open, right? So you just imagine if you had open access to all of your competitors' information, and don't think that there's people not out there wanting to get this information. They do. Preserving guest trust and privacy. So guests entrust vacation rental property managers with personal information during bookings and stays, right? While they're there, they provide physical things, but online they provide their digital identity, right? A security breach could compromise this data. It erodes guest trust and loyalty, right, to your brand a little bit. We'll talk about a little bit later on, but just in general, right, you want to make sure that you preserve that trust, right? Airbnb, the different OTAs, they kind of shield you from some of this, but in the end, there. It's going to be your company that's on the hook when you want to make sure that you're preserving guest trust and privacy and just your data in general. You also want to defend against nefarious acts here. A compromised account could become a launch pad for a few nefarious acts, such as spreading false information about properties or engaging in fraudulent bookings. Again, this is just eroding trust and disrupting your business in general, which I don't know about you guys, but I am completely busy enough. I don't need anybody else adding any work onto my workload, especially if it's somebody from the outside. And then operational continuity and efficiency. I was going to get that right eventually. Account security extends beyond the data protection. It ensures uninterrupted access to critical management tools, such as Hostaway, right? And unauthorized intrusion could disrupt operations and hinder day-to-day activities. Again, this can I've seen it, companies, they lose weeks, they lose months, they leave years in time because accounts are just compromised and for the smallest things, right? And then finally, regulatory compliance and legal obligations. You guys know, being in the vacation rental industry, that all the states, for the most part, have obligations for compliance and regulations that you guys have to follow. Some of you guys are luckier than others. You don't have those, but you do have an obligation to your guests online, and that's making sure that you are complying with keeping their data safe, right? Like I said earlier, this affects you very, very much so whenever you start building a brand, you start getting outside of the standard OTAs. If you have, Joe's Sunshine Vacation Rentals, and you build that brand into your own website, and now you're taking the credit card and you're opening yourself up to even more of the risk. And with that risk comes great reward, but it also means that you can also lose it very quickly if somebody takes your data and starts performing some of these acts. So this is why it's relevant specifically for the vacation rental industry. So let's take a look on what you can do personally. Next slide there. So what should you do to help you protect yourself from all these issues that I talked about and that Marcus talked about a little earlier? Login habits, right? You want to make sure you're creating unique credentials, you're changing your password regularly, and you're avoiding public computers. So I will preface this with everything on here is going to be something that is going to annoy you. You're going to be annoyed that you have to take the extra step to go do this. I was listening to a podcast on security the other day, as a matter of fact, and a question was brought up that said, they said, why don't banks just automatically put two-factor authentication on my logins? Why do they not do that? Because in Europe, you have to put a PIN number in to use your credit card. Why don't they do that in the United States? And it comes down to they don't want to make people jump through hoops to use their credit card. They guess they'll just take the loss on it. Well, just putting that extra protection on there is going to help you out a lot, but it is an extra step, right? But again, I will say that making sure that you're protected, because when people go after things, they're going to go after what's the least barrier, right? So if you have a password such as password 123 or just password, right, you're a very easy target. If you have two-factor authentication on, you're going to be a less target because people just aren't going to go after that. They want to be able to log into something that's quick and easy, get it done and move on, because you're not going to make $1 million off of just one account, but if you had 1 million of them, you probably could. So these are all things that, yes, are going to be a little bit inconvenient for you, but it's something that you should definitely put in your DNA here. Two-factor authentication, I just talked about it a little bit. This is where you get a code whenever you log in. By Hostaway, with Hostaway, it's enabled by default. But this should be on everything. You should have it on emails. You should have it on any place you log in, right? Make sure you have that. Going back to unique credentials, what I mean by that is making sure whenever you're logging into, say, your email account, you don't use the same login and email that you use at, say, Hostaway. And the reason why is if that service is compromised, then they have your username and password for not only just that one service that's compromised, but they have it now for 10 different services if you use it on 10 different places. So if you put a two-factor authentication in there, then all of a sudden they get to the same username and password somewhere else. Well, now they have to put in a code and you've got that code. So that's very important, but also don't use unique same credentials. Phishing and social engineering. So this is very important. Adam was talking about making sure you have an onboarding and offboarding for your employees and for people that just at your company, right? For security, you need to put a security policy in place, right? Train your employees that, hey, you might don't click on every email that's sent to you, right? If I send you an email and it seems a little out of whack, it has a attachment to it or something like that. These are all things that you probably couldn't click on, and you might know this, but you need to make sure your employees know this as well. So verifying communication that comes in and educate and train, right? Send them the link to this whenever you're bringing someone on or somebody joins your company and say, this is why it's important to make sure that we are a secure company. Limit account sharing and access. Authorized users only. Don't share your password out with anybody. Nobody here at Hostaway will ever contact you and ask you for your password. We don't do that. And so you should never be sharing it out with anybody at all. Now, again, this is pretty basic when it comes to things, but you'd be surprised how many people do this, share passwords out. Role-based access. Okay, so in Hostaway we have a role-based access. So only certain people can be allowed to do certain things, like create new listings or change your payout methods, things like that, right? You have to be an admin. And only the admin should be able to do that. And you should not be sharing your admin account. But also, if you have employees, only give them access to what they actually need. Do they only need to communicate with guests? Do not give them every access to everything else. Like, that's just going to set you up later on. And when you're trying to figure out if something happened, who was it and why did it happen? Go ahead and protect yourself. That's why we have the role-based access here at Hostaway. To keep software updated. So again, very rudimentary for a lot of people, but you'd be surprised people that don't update their software regularly because it's too much of a nuisance for them. It's too much of a hassle. But there's a reason why Apple keeps telling me I got to, update my phone. There's a reason why Chrome is always telling me to update my browser and I got to restart it. Oh, it's such a pain to restart. Well, this is why, right? So every time that there's a 0-day or an exploit that's found that comes out, in each one of these different softwares, they release an update and they just rely on you as an end user to make sure you're updating, and they wash their hands of it. They've got to protect it. It's up to you to continue to update your software. So that's very important. I know it's annoying sometimes when you got to reboot and you see that window screen it stays there for, it feels like 15, 20 minutes while it's doing it, but it's imperative to do that. Secure devices and endpoints goes back to the same thing, right? Make sure your device is encrypted. And as there is, antivirus software for computers, there's also antivirus software and malware software for mobile security. So make sure you have a good policy in place to where when somebody comes onto your company, these are the steps you need to take to secure by putting an antivirus on there that you track, and that you're updating and making sure that also the mobile side of that is secure as well. Because if they can get into a mobile app, they can also get into other things as well. Review your third-party integrations. So this goes with our vendor security. Adam was just talking a little bit about APIs. Well, this is where APIs connect at. APIs connect on these integrations. So if you're connecting up to Hostaway or any other platform, this is just in general, make sure that they're approved vendors and that you're not given the same API key is what it's called. And that's basically your secret password for everything. Don't give it to everybody, every different vendor. Make sure everyone has a different key and that they can log in, and then keep those secure. A lot of places won't even allow you to recycle those more than once. Educate and train employees. We talked about it a little bit. Security awareness training, reporting of suspicious activity. We talk a lot here at Hostaway. Marcus makes it a very big point to, tell our staff here at Hostaway, if you get an email from me, it's probably fake. We don't use email communication. Marcus specifically doesn't use email communications internally because a lot of people try to spoof Marcus and get him to send gift cards to people. That's not good. So make sure you report that. And our staff's very very good at doing that because we've been trained to make sure that we report this suspicious activity, to the point where I think Marcus is getting a little frustrated because he gets so many reports of suspicious activity. It seems like every day somebody's trying to spoof Marcus on this side. And then finally, this is a very big point, and I want to, that's why I got it at the end here, is make sure you're choosing the right property management software. Make sure you're choosing the right software in general, right? Look at the partners whenever you're joining. When you join a subscription service and that you're going to give so much access to your financials, your business, right? This is the lifeblood of your business. If something goes wrong with Hostaway, as far as your account gets compromised, you run the risk of not being able to do business. So you want to make sure that you're choosing the right one that cares about security and that handles payment security, right? One of the reasons why we do this here at Hostaway and why we're doing this webinar today is because we want to show that what we've done at Hostaway and what you can do, because we do care a lot about security, because the last thing we want to do is deal with a client and support a client that's losing a lot of money, or they've gotten compromised because of one of these issues that we could have helped prevent. So while we don't have to really, do these webinar where it's kind of basic knowledge for a lot of people, it's important for us because, again, we want to make sure that you're successful in everything that you do. And by that, it's kind of our obligation to go ahead and do this, but and let you know what we've seen and how you can secure yourself. But choose the right property management software and just choose the right software in general. So that's kind of what you should do. I'll kind of turn it over to Adam now on what Hostaway's done.
Thanks, Josh. So as Josh already mentioned, we enabled by default two-factor authentication for all of our customers. This is simply a very effective measure to help improving security. Hostaway also validates passwords to ensure that they meet our security standards and are strong enough. We are also undergoing internal security audits by a third party on a regular basis. And this is important for us because it provides an objective evaluation of our security practices. And it's even more important, particularly for businesses that handle payments data, as compliance with PCI DSS standards is required and can be verified through the third-party audits. We also conduct frequent internal security training for all staff members. So this is important for several reasons. It helps us to ensure that Hostaway staff are aware of the latest security threats and what are the best practices to mitigate them. Helps to prevent security incidents such as data breaches or phishing attacks. It promotes the culture of security within Hostaway, which we are convinced that is the right way to go. When all staff members understand the importance of security and their role in maintaining it, it can help to create a more secure environment overall. And finally, regular security training helps to ensure compliance with industry regulations and standards, which brings us to the next point, the PCI DSS compliance. It stands for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard Compliance. It is a set of security standards established by major credit card companies to protect against credit card fraud. So compliance with these standards is required for any business that stores, processes, or transmits card payment data. And the standards cover a range of security measures, including network security, access control, and encryption. In addition, Hostaway offers very granular user access control. As Josh mentioned, this feature enables account administrators to grant access to specific system modules such as reservations, listings, tasks, messages, and specify the access level for each module on the user basis. So this level of control ensures that our customers have complete oversight over what data their users can access, and it provides an additional layer of security. Over to you,
I could
Marcus.
maybe add here that before we go to the next slide, that we have done a lot over the years. Actually, I think one of the first features we built was our user management system. But as Josh said, these are not things that we want to do in a business. I mean, you want to spend your time on making sure your properties are marketed the right way, and spending time on cybersecurity is usually not something that helps your bottom line right away. It will help over the long run. But I wanted to mention an example. Just when we first introduced our user management system, someone had set up one of their employees as an admin on their Hostaway account, and they ended up letting the employee go after just 2 days. What did the employee do? He logged in as the admin and deleted the owner of the account. That's why you should actually use the proper user management tools, because we made them there for you. And yes, they can be a bit complex. I'll give an example. We use almost 100 different softwares here at Hostaway just internally, and not everyone has access to all the information. There's even laws against that. There's for example, employee privacy laws in various regions, which means we can't give everyone's access to everyone. And what that means is, no matter how well these systems are built up, sometimes someone needs access and we have to go in and manually give it. You should probably treat your business the same. Set it up so that people have access to the things they need on a daily basis. But if they need something once a year, don't give them default access. Just let them ask you. That's a good practice. I also wanted to let you know that that we put a lot of efforts into internal training, but not only for our staff, also from the customer point of view. So if anyone would like to impersonate you and call Hostaway support and try to get your password, that simply is not going to happen. But that's something that doesn't come automatically. This has in fact required years of investment from us. And just to give an example, there was an OTA who reviewed our cybersecurity insurance, and it turned out we only were covered for 1 million, and they wanted us to be covered for 10 million. Now, we got a cybersecurity insurance worth 10 million that pays out 10 million in case something happens, but we could only get that if we made, I think, 45 big changes within the company. And this is something that's important for you to keep in mind, that Hostaway has never been hacked. We never had a data breach in our history, and that's exactly because we have invested a lot of time into making sure, and a lot of money into making sure, that we stay secure. But it hasn't been easy for us, and it isn't always the easiest for anyone to make sure your cybersecurity practices are up to date. But it's really worth the energy, because once you have an incident, and we've had people, we know people who have had that, it's very hard to get back and find out what happened and why it happened can be impossible. All right. I wanted to also mention, I see a couple of the questions here in the QA section, really good questions about guests. It's a good point. We have been purely talking here about the property management aspect. Now, I wanted to highlight some of our partners. First of all, if you work with a partner through Hostaway, please make sure that they're listed on our marketplace. You go to hostaway.com and click on marketplace, you'll find all the authorized partners. If there's someone else who's asking for your API keys to the Hostaway account and they're not listed there, that means they can get access to all your information on your account, and we can't do anything because you are the ones who, it's a bit like if you have a safe and you give someone the key, well, we can't be held accountable if you gave the key. That's why it's called an API key, because it opens up the safe. But there are a couple of partners here that I wanted to highlight that can help you with problems related to guests, because not all guests are optimal for your business. And there's a lot of tools here. You can see on the left side, AutoHost, Safely Check-in, Authenticating, Superhog, Answer Connect, TrustD, that can help you with guest screening. They can, some of them verify the identity. They run criminal records. They automatically report to the local authorities. There's also a lot of insurance that you can get against misbehavior of guests, and there's companies that can manage security deposits. Once again, if it's something you don't want to manage yourself, keep in mind a security deposit is a liability for your business. If you have $10,000 in security deposits, that's a debt that has to be repaid. And if you have an external party handling it, your company has less debt. So keep this in mind. We have a lot of partners who can help you with improving the security for yourself and for your guests. All right, now let's get to the QA section. So first of all, Brandy asks, she often gets fake reservations on booking.com where the guest asks to move the communication to email, where they send phishing links. So yes, like I said in the beginning, vacation rentals is a great target for scammers because the transactions are irregular, infrequent, and they're big. So if you wanted to, let's say you have a fake credit card and you wanted to get $10,000 from there, you simply can't go to a gas station because nobody spends $10,000 at a gas station. But vacation rentals would be the perfect target for that, because there are people who spend $10,000 on just one transaction, maybe just once a year or once in a lifetime. Now, when it comes to booking.com, what I would recommend is you make sure you manage the payments. Actually, Brandy's question is specifically, how do you cancel those bookings? Because she has to manually contact booking.com. We have a functionality for that within Hostaway. You just have to set it up so that you manage the payments for these guests, in which case, when they submit their credit card together with the reservation, set it up so that you automatically charge the full amount right away. If the payment fails, you can just automatically or click a button to report a failed credit card. It will go back to the guest. If they don't submit a new credit card, which they won't, then the reservation will be automatically canceled within 48 hours. Now Shay had a good question here. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on top of that, Brindy, to this, it's also being diligent about your security, right? So if there's somebody's asking to move off the channel into either a text message or an email, you should think about that as very suspicious and get away from that as much as possible, because I think it is a violation of some of the terms and services of the OTAs. And it's also a little suspicious too. So keep that in mind whenever you're going on a day-to-day basis of looking at things like that. Obviously, you noticed it where it was a scam, but that's going to happen more often than not when they're trying to do things outside of the platform.
Yeah, and one thing that we've learned over the years, a really good best practice, is that there's a lot of hoops. I mean, for the guest, it's not nice. Just like it's not nice for us to use 2FA and have a lot of settings we need to check up on and update our phones every second week. It's not nice. It's also not nice for the guest if they always have to show an ID and put in an extra credit card and answer a bunch of questions just because they're checking into a place to stay for a couple of nights. But already communicating openly that you will be checking the IDs of every single guest, you don't actually have to do it. That will already deter most of the scam attempts. So that's good to keep in mind, that even though you should consider using tools, actually Hostaway's new check-in form allows you to require the ID of the guests, but you don't have to do that. It's enough. It will remove 99% of the scams out there if you just tell people before they even book that, hey, we'll be checking ID of everyone before they get access to the property. That will already solve a lot of problems. Now, Shay has a question. How does the two-factor authentication work when you have a property manager? Does the manager use their email as the admin, or do you put theirs, and do you have to always give them the codes? So first of all, on Hostaway, every user there should have a different user ID, and that user ID will be connected to their phone number and their email. So whenever they log in, they can receive a text message on their own phone or receive it to their email. So you should never have multiple people on one account. Now, if you're asking here, Shay, and please specify if you're asking about Airbnb, well, they don't have multiple users. So if you want to give someone access to the Airbnb account, first of all, you should be asking yourself, is that really necessary? Because if you have an Airbnb account and you let someone manage it, they should be using a software such as Hostaway that can connect through the API so that you never need to give up your password to anyone. So in other words, Shay, to answer your question, you should never be in a position where you have to give your user codes to someone else. Now, from a property management manager point of view, maybe some of your staff will need to access some of the Airbnb accounts for specific reasons, but probably you should be using a property management system such as Hostaway to give them access to do that. For example, if they want to answer guest messages on multiple Airbnb accounts, yeah, they can't log in there, but you can create a user within Hostaway and they can connect their own cell phone and get the code so that you don't have to give codes. Basically, 2FA, if you have to give a security code to someone else, that means that either the tools that you're using are not advanced enough for your business, or you're simply doing it wrong. Sorry for being so blunt. Here's a question maybe for Adam. Who does Hostaway recommend to use for antivirus software?
So first of all, any antivirus software is better than none. And that's the best practice, to at least have any. If you don't want to pay extra for the antivirus software, just download the free version. I can tell you that I personally use Bitdefender. I also used Node32. I used Norton solution by Symantec, and all of them work just fine for me.
All right. Now, Gabe has a question about security deposit for damages and using Stripe. They still end up siding with the customer when they put in a chargeback. How do we protect ourselves from this? Well, first of all, it's not Stripe who decides on how a chargeback ends, or whatever payment processor you're using. It's not the payment processor's job to decide. It's the credit card company. So if the guest has a Visa card, it's ultimately Visa who decides who's right or wrong. Actually, Visa and MasterCard are bad examples because in those cases, they license their cards to the banks. So let's say you get a Visa card from Bank of America. It's actually Bank of America who decides where the chargeback goes. Now, in order to prevent a chargeback, what's very important is that you have a written contract and that you have proof of making sure that the person who signed the contract is the same person who is who is the owner of the credit card. Now, there's 3 pieces of information needed there. You need a credit card, which actually in this case, you have it already since you charged it. But you also need a rental agreement, and you need a copy of their ID to prove that it was them who signed it. Because you can't just go out and print a paper that says that Adam owes me $1,000 and then I'll use that to justify me getting $1,000. No, I have to approve that it's actually Adam who signed it. And all these 3 things can be automated within Hostaway. You can request the ID, you can have the guest sign a rental agreement, and when you provide that to any credit card company, just think about car rentals. They do this millions of times a day, and they actually have to do that. The credit card companies are and the banks, they're very familiar with the business model, and they understand that they can't just give a chargeback. But the car rental companies, they have these things. Whenever you go and pick up your car, they check your face, they check your ID because they ask you for a driver's license, they check the credit card, because they want to check that the name on the credit card matches your ID, and then they have you sign an agreement with your signature. That's why you can never do a chargeback against a car rental company. And same thing with a vacation rental. Just have those 3 things in place: the credit card, the face, 4 things, the ID, and the rental agreement, and you won't have any problems with chargebacks. And same goes for regular reservations, not just security deposits. Now, here's a good question from Barbara. Do we need antivirus with a Mac computer? I have no idea. Adam.
Yes, it's a common misconception that we don't need an antivirus software for Mac computers. So we need antivirus software for any operating system. It doesn't matter if it's Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. All of the systems have vulnerabilities. And if you're not using antivirus software, you're exposing those possible vulnerabilities.
All right. By the way, Josh, if you see any questions you'd like to take, please go ahead. We have quite good questions here. So anonymous attendee said, we had a booking which was paid by Stripe. Few days later, Stripe informed us of a possible fraud. The booking was through booking.com. The reservation is a few weeks' time. What's the best advice you can give us, the best approach to this? Now, if Stripe is informing you of possible fraud, there can be 2 reasons. Either it's a legitimate fraud, meaning that they stole a credit card, in which case the credit card is invalid, and you can go under the reservation in Hostaway and click invalid credit card, and booking.com will cancel it. But if it's not a fraud, but rather a possible fraud, what that simply can mean is exactly what I just explained a few times, that you probably have a merchant account where you don't have a lot of transactions, meaning you don't get 10 bookings a day on a regular basis, but you get them, let's say one per week. And it can be for an amount that's not $2, but maybe 5,000. In that case, that would be possible fraud already. This is why the flags go off. Because if you run a business that's based on credit card, like a car rental company, you'll have 100 people coming in. Everyone is paying $200 a day. And the next day you have another 100 people. Everyone's paying $200 on the credit card. That's very consistent. But the vacation rental industry is not that consistent, which is why the credit card companies are raising these flags in the first place. It's also the reason why this industry is targeted by fraudsters, because what a fraudster wants is a business where you have irregular activity in a normal, where irregular activity is the regular.
A question here about rental agreements. The one that appears in Hostaway does not fit our needs. Is there a way to add our own rental agreement to the guest portal check-in form? Yes, actually there is. And I'm glad you saw that in Hostaway. You can actually edit that to be whatever you want to. Let's see, who is that? Yeah, so rental agreements. If you just type in rental agreements Hostaway on Google, it'll come up first response there. You can edit, you can add your own rental agreement. You can do it per listing. You could do it for just by default, but yes, you can turn on your own rental agreement. You can add signatures in there. You can make it where they have that's required. So yes, edit the rental agreement, make it your own custom one to help prevent any sort of help support any cases you might get that you have to file the chargebacks for.
All right, we got a couple of questions here about the website that Hostaway provides from Victoria and from Rainey. Has there been any fraud scams that we've seen, and what are the security measures that are in place? I'll name a couple of them. So first of all, the connection is secure. And you see that in your browser, that it will always be secure. But most importantly, Adam mentioned a couple of weird abbreviation there. We're PCI DSS compliant. What that basically means is that when someone enters a credit card on the website, we have a secure connection, which means that we don't get access to that credit card. So our staff can't access it, our engineers can't access it. It's never stored in our database. It goes directly to your own Stripe account. And at that point, Stripe checks it and sees whether it's a valid credit card or not. So it's practically impossible to make a booking with a known stolen credit cards. And most known stolen credit cards, in fact flagged as stolen, because the moment you notice a fraudulent transaction, you cancel your credit card. So those will not even come true. Now, in addition to that, you can set up any automations there. You can also set up inquiries only. But I'd say the main reason why we haven't seen any frauds or scams there is that the amount of publicity that you get to your website, you are very much in control of that. The reasons why you might see scams happening on the major OTAs, like the one mentioned here about Airbnb or Booking.com or Vrbo, they happen because people know about them and people try to find flaws in those systems. Now, when it comes to your website, people don't know about that. If you advertise it on your Facebook page, there's a very limited amount of people that's going to see that. And they're likely the people who want to book, but not the people who are out there to create fraud. And even if there's one more factor that provides an extra layer of security on your own booking website. Let's say you have 20 properties there. If someone figures out a way to scam you on that website, they're pretty much limited to only that. So because these scams, the reason why they work is that although they have a low probability of succeeding, if they just do it 1,000,000 times, they can make a lot of money. But if you only have 20 properties on your website and there's one property manager behind your website, they can't do 1,000,000 scams. They might be able to scam you once, but this is why it doesn't make any sense for a scammer to try to find vulnerabilities in your website compared to, let's say, Airbnb, where if they can do a successful scam, they can do it 1,000,000. They can actually do it 10,000,000 times if they find a successful way to get through the security, which usually doesn't happen. Adam, do you have anything to add on the security of our website?
Well, I see a question about SSL here, but that can vary depending on the GoDaddy settings as well. So for that, I would encourage to reach out to our support team and we can look into the specifics here.
Yes, very good point. If you have your own domain as the website and you use Hostaway as the booking engine, there is some configuration. We have a help guide on that needs to be done wherever you're hosting the domain name. And yes, your guests shouldn't book on an unsecure website. It's worth mentioning, though, that when you change these settings, it will take up to 48 hours for them to take place, because the DNS servers all around the world, they have to update those records to reflect that. So you can't just click a button and see if it works. You have to click a button and then wait 48 hours. Usually, if you have the right settings, it will work. Unfortunately, there is the delay involved there. So please reach out to our support. Now, there's a question from an anonymous attendee that's not related to security. Actually, it is related to security. Does Hostaway support all Airbnb Resolution Center activity through the API so that users don't need access to Airbnb? This is a very relevant question. I said earlier, if you have to give out access codes to someone else, you're doing it wrong. But the Resolution Center is something that's still not fully supported within Hostaway, and we are working on it together with Airbnb. The challenge is that they don't have that functionality, but they are working on it and we will implement it eventually. So really good question. And maybe a solution there is to make sure you have one staff member who you really trust who handles all Resolution Center requests. Because if you give many staff members access to your Airbnb account, well, then there's a higher likelihood that one of their computers might be compromised, and whoever has access to that computer might be able to go in and, let's say, change the bank account details. All right, I think that's all the questions here, and we're right on time. Matthew asks a cryptic question here. If we are using Hostaway online check-in forms, I think you hit enter a bit too soon. But yeah, the check-in forms that we just released a few weeks ago, we have been working on them for over a year. they allow you to gather additional information from the guest. But once again, this information is not there to make it more difficult for your guest, and it actually won't protect you. But what it will do is it will send a strong message to any scammers or even guests with bad intention that you are on top of things. So when you are required to submit an ID in order to check into a place, if you have bad intentions, you're not going to go through with the booking. That's the main objective of that check-in form. Manish, you have a very technical question about, or a very specific question about the mobile phone number inputs. So please reach out to support and we'll investigate that. Now, Matthew is asking a good question. To check guest IDs, how can we be sure that the IDs are valid? This is a very relevant question. So let's say someone books your place and you ask them to upload an ID. How do you make sure they're valid? Well, one option is to ask for a selfie. That's actually what they do at the car rentals. Once again, they don't take a selfie of you, they don't ask for a selfie, but they do check your face. And this is one way you can do it. Ask them to send a selfie. There's also our partners. They have very smooth workflows. I think I would say AutoHost and Enso Connect are two, and Check-in are three excellent services for that if it's a big problem. But once again, Matthew, I think the amount of fraud that happens where an ID was never requested compared to the fraud that happens when a fake ID was submitted is massively bigger. So already asking for an ID, yeah, Matthew, you can do all of that using our check-in forms online. And we got a series. No, I think we took it down on YouTube, but we had a webinar about the check-in forms, and our support team and customer success team are very happy to help you get those into use. All right. Thanks for the feedback, Victoria. It was a fun webinar. And if you have any questions or any concerns about security, please always reach out to support. And in the strange incident that you happen to lose your password and your phone and access to your email, don't be frustrated if we won't give you your access back right away. It's simply that we're trying to make sure your account is secure. And if you call us in, we want to make sure we know who you are. And you probably want that protection for your business as well. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and see you next month.